We continue through our study in the book of Mark. We are now towards the end of the first chapter, and it's Mark 1, 29 through 45, and I titled this message, Healing Power. And again, we start off with Mark's favorite word in verse 29, and immediately. Mark loved that word immediately. He uses it many, many times. Like we said, it's used actually 11 times in the first chapter alone. And immediately after they came out of the synagogue, they came to the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. So they leave the synagogue, and they're going to go to the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John, because if you remember, now Jesus at this point has 4 regular disciples. There are others that are following him, and even some that are later on become his disciples, but the official disciples at this point is 4. Okay? But I find it interesting in this verse here where we look at what's going on. We see that these men, they brought Jesus to their house after church. Do we bring Jesus to our house after church? Here's a real clear example of what we should be doing. Or do we leave church and leave Jesus there? We'll see him again next week. It's not something that you'd automatically see when you're looking at this, but you're looking at it and say, you know, that's exactly what happened here. These first disciples, they invite Jesus to come, and he does. They leave the church and bring Jesus with them. Verse 31. Now Simon's mother-in-law was lying sick with a fever, and immediately they spoke to Jesus about her. And he came to her and raised her up, taking her by the hand, and the fever left her, and she waited on them. Okay, Jesus has been teaching all day or all morning. He now comes to this invitation to Simon's house, and where they're going to have a meal prepared. Jesus now can relax, but what happens? Well, immediately there is somebody there that's sick. And Mark doesn't explain this. John does actually in a little bit more detail. She was very sick. It wasn't that she just had a little fever. She had a fever that could easily lead to death. So she's laying in bed, and you know what it's like to be really, really sick and you just got no energy whatsoever. I mean, you want to do things, but you just simply can't because the energy factor is gone. So that's what we have to look at when we're seeing Simon's mother-in-law. She's laying there with no energy, nothing. And on top of it, she has a very serious illness of some sort. So they spoke to Jesus about it. And of course, Mark, immediately they spoke to Jesus about it. They don't wait any time. So this is the first thing that he comes into the house, and he finds out that Simon's mother-in-law is sick. But then, see what he does. He goes over to her, and he raises her up. How? By taking her by the hand. Now you have to understand something. He just came from synagogue, okay? If he touched a sick person, he would be defiled, okay? So the fact that he actually reached out his hand to raise her up, because like all the miracles of Jesus, every single one is unique. It's always for that particular circumstance or person. It's the way it's always done. And then the amazing thing that happens, it wasn't just, well, the fever's going down now. No, the fever is gone. Well, the energy is coming back. No, the energy is back. This was all instantaneously. This was immediately. It didn't take time. It just was there. It happened immediately. But you see the gentleness of Jesus as he comes to the bedside, and he just reaches out picks her up by her hand and lifts her out of the bed. But she doesn't really need help to get up because she's healed. See, when Jesus cast out the demon, which we looked at before, and Peter and Peter's mother-in-law, or Simon's mother-in-law, he wasn't actually violating any natural order. It wasn't like, this is not normal, this is unnatural. No, what he did is he restored the natural order. See, we think of a miracle as something that's unique and something that's strange and it's something that changes things. Well, it does, but it changes it from corruption to perfection. Verse 32 and 33. When evening came after the sunset, they began to bring to him all who were ill and those who were demon-possessed, and the whole city had gathered at the door. If you look at this, you think of something strange here, okay, Jesus was at the synagogue. The people knew he was there. They knew that where he was going, and now they wait until evening to bring all the sick. And why did you wait? I mean, Jesus is going to be there. Let's get there now. Okay, well, maybe they wanted to give him some peace and quiet to have his meal. No, they didn't. They never even gave that a thought. The reason that they didn't is because you have to understand the Jewish day. The Jewish day starts when the sun goes down. And it ends when the sun goes down the next day. Now, where do they get that from? Well, this thing we've heard about is called creation. And there was evening and there was morning the first day, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. So we actually are contrary to the natural order because we do it the opposite way. Daytime is when the day is. Nighttime is not when the day is. But so in the evening, it now was the next day, so it wasn't the Sabbath anymore. Now they could travel and they could do these things that they couldn't do before because of the law about the Sabbath. So suddenly, this actually makes sense. But they come now. But you can just imagine, the people, they have a relative, they have a friend who has an injury, who is sick, who's demon-possessed or whatever. And you can just see them sitting in their houses looking at their watch. When can we go? When can we go? It's just our time. Another 10 minutes yet. We got to wait. And as soon as that, it's like a countdown clock going on. And then all of a sudden it's evening. You can see these 3 particular stars in the sky. Now we can go. Imagine what that anticipation was like for the sick person. I want to go get healed. Jesus is healing people. Can't we leave 5 minutes early? Because there's probably going to be a bunch of people there and I'm going to have to wait in line. Let's get ahead of the line. No, they were so strict in following this that they would not do that. You remember, they were under the law, and sometimes they used the law as an excuse. But there are certain things that the Jewish people in those days would not do, and they would not violate certain things. Absolutely. They would die for it. That really was devotion. I give them credit for the devotion. Sometimes we should have some of that devotion, that we want this thing, we want to do this thing, but we can't until, but I want it now. It's just like patience, I want it now. Just give it to me. Verse 34, and he healed many who were ill with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he was not permitted the demons to speak because they knew who he was. Okay? He healed many. I find it interesting that it says he healed many instead of he healed all. That's an interesting thing. See, sometimes those words, they speak volumes when you catch them. Because this is a comparison. And throughout all of the miracles of Jesus, we're going to see how the important factor is not the healing of the physical body, but the healing of the soul. See, there are people that simply reject Jesus, and they're not healed of the soul. but many are. And here we have that example. And then we have also the demons aren't permitted to speak. See, Jesus does not want the testimony of Satan. And that's exactly what it would be. The testimony of Satan. But they spoke on numerous occasions anyway. And you can imagine, if you stop and think about it, the demons were saying, yes, this is the Son of God. You're the Son of the Most High. Can you imagine what kind of a tone was used when it was said? I don't think it was said as a way of elevating who Jesus was. I think it was more of the case of a mocking. Because people invoke the name of Jesus all the time. And many people in this world, it's a common thing. But it's mocking. And we don't mock our God, our Savior. The demons, they would. See, many people want relief from pain and affliction, but they're not ready to repent, to receive salvation. Others wait for the right time, wanting to be sure that Jesus is ready to accept them. I've heard that excuse. When I take care of this, when I get rid of that, when I stop doing those things, then I know I can come. And how many times have you heard that saying, I'll be struck by lightning if I walk through the church door. And there are people that actually have that almost believe themselves. Right? See, Jesus is ready. The people waited until evening. But Jesus was ready for them. We don't need to wait. See, some come on their own. Some are brought by friends or by others. And they do it primarily, they came here to be free of sickness. When they really need it, and what we really need is freed from the sickness of sin. Verse 35, in the early morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went away to a secluded place and was praying there. Early in the morning, while it's still dark. Okay? 5 o'clock, it's still dark. 6 o'clock, the sun starts coming up. See, Jesus got up and left the house. The house is full of people. Most of them are sleeping, but he leaves. And he goes away. He goes where? To a secluded place. Someplace where it's private. Someplace where it's quiet. Someplace where he shouldn't be disturbed. And what did he go there for? He went there to pray. Now, we're going to look at that a little bit more here in a minute. See, in John 5:19, therefore Jesus answered and was saying to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself unless it is something he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, these things the Son does in like manner. Isn't it amazing that Jesus needed to pray? He did. See, Jesus came, and in his humanity, he needed that time with the Father. He needed that private one-on-one time. And it gets me to thinking that if Jesus needed to spend time with the Father in prayer, how much more do we need to spend time with the Father in prayer? It's needed. It's not something that we kind of do it, kind of not do it. No, we need it. Verse 36 and 37, Simon and his companions searched for him. They found him and said to him, everyone is looking for you. Of course, all these people had come. Now it's the next day, and Jesus has disappeared. And of course, you got a bunch of other people that now showed up at the door wanting healing. Okay? But the disciples and the people wanted Jesus for what? For what he could do for them physically. That's what's such a big deal. I mean, And it is a big deal. I mean, if you've got a close family member that has got a serious disease and you're going to take them to Jesus and Jesus can heal them, that's our top priority. But if you have a close friend, close family member that doesn't know Jesus, how much greater is it that they come to know and have a relationship with Jesus Christ? The disease is gone when the person leaves this world. But the separation from God becomes permanent. There's a little story I ran across, and I have no idea who the author is, but I found it kind of interesting, and I just putting it out here. It's a story I read. I don't know the truth behind it or not, but either which way, it's still a good story. The early African converts, and of course it's talking about the African slaves, to Christianity were earnest and regular in private devotions. Each one reportedly had a separate spot in the thicket where they would pour out their heart to God. Over time, the paths to these places became well-worn. As a result, if one of these believers began to neglect prayer, it was soon apparent to the others. They would kindly remind the negligent one, "Brother, the grass grows on your path." This goes to that holding each other accountable. And we do need that. We all need to be held accountable. It's not that I am stronger and you are weaker. It's we all have that inherent need to be held accountable. Verse 38 and 39, he said to them, "Let's go somewhere else to towns nearby so that I may preach there also. That is what I came for." And he went into their synagogues throughout Galilee, preaching and casting out the demons. See, originally Jesus preached in Nazareth, his hometown, and they basically threw him out of town. Now, Mark doesn't cover that, so we didn't cover that. But and now he goes, say to Capernaum, which ends up becoming kind of his home base. But he's preaching there, he's teaching there, he's doing miracles there, and he says, now it's time to move on. Because there's many other places we need to be going. So let's go someplace else. Because there's lots of towns, they're even close by. That's what I came for. It's interesting that Jesus says, I didn't come here to do all these miracles. I didn't come here to heal people of diseases. I didn't come here to cast out demons. I came here to preach the gospel. That is my purpose right now. So he went into the synagogues throughout all Galilee, preaching and casting out demons. He didn't stop the casting out demons. But Jesus didn't come to heal people. Jesus didn't come to cast out demons. Jesus came to save people. So then you ask, well, why the miracles? I mean, did he have to do miracles? Really not, because his purpose wasn't to come to do miracles. But what did the miracles do? They did actually, I think, two things. First of all, they got the people's attention. Because the miracles is why all these people left at 6 o'clock to come to the house where Jesus was to be healed. So he was getting their attention. Now, he got their attention through the miracles, but he also was demonstrating that he was somebody with spectacular powers, that he was God. He was doing things that only God can do. He was demonstrating this over and over again. But the people, to a large extent, didn't get it. And we're going to see that even more here in a minute. Verse 40, and a leper came to Jesus, beseeching him and falling on his knees before him and saying, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Now we're talking about somebody that has the disease of leprosy. And I'm not going to get into all the details of what leprosy is. And sometimes let's say when you study it, you get this way and that way. But basically what it was is it was a flesh disease that ate the flesh and then eventually ate internal organs, and that would kill you. Okay? That's my understanding. Now, I could be wrong on part of it, all of it, or whatever. What the important part is, it was a disease that you were going to die from. And you were going to die a painful, miserable death. But leprosy also in the Bible is equated quite often as a type of sin. So it's kind of a reflection of that. So often people in those days would stop and think, if a person had leprosy, it was because they sinned. That's the reason they got leprosy in the first place. Now, they were wrong, but that was the mindset. So in those days, you'd have that most likely die, but then you stop and look at this man, okay? He comes to Jesus, beseeching him, or basically begging him. But a leper was not allowed to go close to healthy people. If a leper was coming towards you and you were telling them to get away and they didn't, you had the right to stone them to death. So this leper is coming to Jesus knowing that that is a possibility. That one or two things could easily happen. One is that if he was really, really lucky, that they would yell at him and chase him off. If he wasn't so lucky, they would stone him to death. So this was his risk factor. But he came anyway. He cast all those worries aside because he believed that Jesus could. He did not know if Jesus would. You can see that in his question or the way he responds. If you are willing, you can. I know you can. I know you're capable. I just don't know if you're willing to. See, Jesus saw this soul in desperate need, but he also saw one who was unclean. But that's just the point. Jesus came to make the unclean clean. That's what his touch can do, and only his. There's a little line out from William Barclay, who's a theologian from days gone by. See, Jesus saw a human being in need, and he could fulfill that need. Verse 41, moved with compassion, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing, be cleansed. First, look at compassion. Okay, that's an interesting word. It's also a very, very strong word. It has a lengthy meaning, really. See, it refers to having a feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. So its compassion is more than just, oh, I really feel sorry for you. No, it's a deep-seated feel sorry for you, but it's also, what can I do? I want to help alleviate the problem that you have. See, that's compassion. Feeling sorry for somebody is not compassion. Feeling sorry for them and doing something about it, that's compassion. So what does Jesus do? He has compassion. He feels sorry for the predicament that they're in, and he's going to do something about it. I am willing, be cleansed. Remember, Simon's mother-in-law was sick in bed, and he reached out his hand and he held her, and she got up, and immediately she went out and started serving and helping. Her energy was right back. She was cured totally. You got the exact same thing with this leper. Jesus touches him. Now, it was bad enough to touch somebody who was sick in a bed, but to touch a leper, because that, you're going to get it. I mean, remember the early days of AIDS. Some of you might remember it, some of you might not. Where it was, if you got near a person that had it, you were going to get it. I mean, there was this huge fear out there. Well, that same mindset was in the Jews at this time. A leper, if you got too close to them, you were going to catch it. What does Jesus do? He reaches out and he touches the man. And the man is cleansed instantly. Now, it's just, You remember, you have a skin disease that's actually showing up all over. Faces that are disfigured, and how far along it was, we don't know. But he was in really, really bad shape, and suddenly he's not. It wasn't, see that skin growing back? See that skin growing back? No, it's back. It's now. It's, again, immediately. Because in verse 42 through 44, immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. And he, that's Jesus, sternly warned him and immediately sent him away. Okay? Jesus says, okay, you are cleansed. Now you go. But he warned him. And he said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest. And the priest will offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Now this is an easy misunderstood section, because we're trying to figure out, why did Jesus send him away? Why did Jesus tell him not to go tell anybody, but to go straight to the priests? Well, in Leviticus, we understand that a person that had leprosy, if they felt as though they were cleansed, they had to go to the priest to be inspected. And then the priest would say that, yes, you have been cured, and now you can go back into society. Here again, sometimes one word tells us a lot, okay? That Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Now, who's them? The priests. See, Jesus said, go to the priest and show them that you are cleansed. So the testimony, the healing, was for the benefit of the priests. See, because they were having a real hard time accepting Jesus. And now he's going to have a testimony that is clearly right in front of them. They still rejected it. See, the priest was not to go into the temple to see the priest. The priest had to come out to see him. Verse 45. But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the news around to such an extent that Jesus could no longer publicly enter a city, but stayed in unpopulated areas, and there they were coming to him from everywhere. See, this guy didn't listen. This wonderful thing happened to him, and he just could not contain himself. He just had to tell everybody, even after Jesus told him, don't. And we can see the problem, of course, for Jesus was now he can't go anywhere without the crowds being so big that he can't even accomplish the work that God sent him to do. But he's still going to accomplish it. See, if one way is taken away, another is replaced. God's plan is going to come to fruition, regardless of people helping or not, regardless if people believe or accept or follow the instructions. His plans are always going to be. So we look at this and say, well, what does this teach us? See, it's one thing to go through and to learn the teaching that's there, but how does that teaching actually affect us today? So what can we learn? Well, leprosy is equated to sin. See, it starts off as a small spot, and over time it grows to the point that the whole body is infected. It leads to death. See, this is also true for sin. It starts off as a small, insignificant thing. It becomes an all-consuming. It controls every aspect of life. No longer is fellowship with others possible. We will withdraw from our home church, not wanting to be around other Christians as we feel unclean. In despair and in hopelessness, there is a way out, and it is Jesus. He will treat us like he treated the leper, reaching out with that life-changing touch. See, he will reach with it. We can be changed by him if we would just acknowledge him and we would take Jesus home with us instead of leaving church and thinking, well, that was good or that was bad, whichever it is. But we need to take Jesus home with us. He must be part of our everyday life, every aspect of our life. He's the only one that can cure us from that disease of sin, that disease that leads to death. And that's permanent death.